অর্থনীতি চাকা অনুষ্ঠান থেকে আমি হাবিবুল্লাহ করিম আপনাদের সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি। স্টুডিওর ভিতরে আমরা যারা আছি এবং দূর দূরান্ত থেকে যারা এই অনুষ্ঠান দেখছি সবাইকে শুভ সন্ধ্যা। অর্থনীতি চাকা অনুষ্ঠানের আজকের পর্বে আমরা যে বিষয় নিয়ে আলোচনা করব সেটা হচ্ছে দেশের অর্থনৈতিক প্রবৃদ্ধিতে বিনিয়োগের কি ভূমিকা এবং সে বিষয়ে দক্ষিণ পূর্ব এশিয়া থেকে আমাদের শিক্ষণীয় কি কি বিষয় রয়েছে। আমরা খুবই আনন্দিত যে আজকে আমাদের সাথে এই বিষয়ে আলোচনা করার জন্য উপস্থিত আছেন জাতিসংঘের অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট সেক্রেটারি জেনারেল ডক্টর জোমো সুন্দারাম, যিনি এই দক্ষিণ পূর্ব এশিয়ার অর্থনৈতিক প্রবৃদ্ধির উপরে ওনার বেশ কিছু স্টাডি রয়েছে, রিসার্চ পেপার রয়েছে এবং এই বিষয়ে উনি আন্তর্জাতিকভাবে স্বীকৃত একজন স্কলার। এবং আরও এই বিষয়ে আলোচনার জন্য উপস্থিত আছেন বাংলাদেশের মেট্রোপলিটন চেম্বার অফ কমার্স অ্যান্ড ইন্ডাস্ট্রির প্রেসিডেন্ট জনাব আনিসুদ্দৌলা। Welcome, Jomo, to our program. I understand that this is your third visit to Bangladesh, but probably the second visit in many years, 14-15 years. So what is the big difference you're seeing since your last visit to Bangladesh this time?
Having just arrived this morning, I think it would be very silly of me to make too many pronouncements about Bangladesh, but one thing is very clear: the traffic jams are worse.
Okay.
And it took us quite a long time to get here. That, for many people, is a great sign of progress.
Okay. So that also means that we need a lot of work in terms of infrastructure in this country. And we also, a little while back, we experienced a little bit of a power outage. So power, transportation, ports, this infrastructure is a major issue for us. And of course, to overcome this, lack of infrastructure facilities in Bangladesh, we need a lot of investment. So FDI, or foreign direct investment, will probably play a very major role in trying to carry out the kind of infrastructure projects. So based on your experience in Southeast Asia, where do you see the parallels in Bangladesh in terms of the challenges and the opportunities?
Well, firstly, I think it's very important to clarify a few things about the need for foreign direct investment.
Okay.
According to what I heard this morning, I learned from Bangladeshi colleagues, the savings rate is actually much higher than the investment rate. So obviously Bangladeshis are capable of savings, and if you add remittances as well, in other words, one form of foreign savings to the domestic savings, you have a great deal of underutilized resources.
Okay.
Secondly, we also know from experience that it is the investment rate which leads and savings rates follows. In other words, if you are able to raise investments, savings rates will increase. So the challenge is really to raise the investment rate, and you have correctly pointed out a number of areas where there is a great deal of reluctance apparently from private sector interests, not necessarily just domestic investors, to invest in certain sectors such as infrastructure. And part of the problem may be assurances which the investors may need to make the kinds of long-term commitments which are absolutely necessary for infrastructure development.
Right. Absolutely.
And we have in Asia a very, very serious shortfall throughout Asia, where the estimates by JBIC, the Japan Bank of International Cooperation, for how much investments are needed throughout Asia annually are in excess of 700 billion.
Wow.
Okay. Now, and if you look at the Asian Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank's portfolio is not even 10%, it's not even 5% of that.
Investment level.
So obviously there is a big problem that there is a lot of money moving around, but a lot of it has become hot money, moving in and out of markets, pushing up stock market prices, pushing up real estate prices, but with very little contribution to the real economy.
Right.
So what we need is a system which will intermediate more effectively between the availability of finance and transforming it into real investments.
Real investments, right.
Now, in Southeast Asia, this problem was partly overcome in a number of different ways, but the real lessons are to be learned from Northeast Asia rather than from Southeast Asia.
Okay.
In Northeast Asia,
you mean Japan, South Korea, Taiwan?
Yes.
Okay.
In those three economies, you had a very successful role, particularly of the banking sector, and the Ministry of Finance played a very, very important role. Japanese interest rates, for example, are legendary, but it doesn't mean the Japanese don't save. They are Japanese investment interest rates are almost zero.
Almost zero, right?
Yes.
Now it's zero, right?
But Japanese save a great deal,
Right.
those savings are transformed into investments in the real economy.
Right.
When they liberalized without thinking about the consequences, the result was a bit of a disaster. In the case of Japan, it resulted in the so-called Big Bang of 1989-1990, and
Right.
after that, Japanese growth has not been what it was.
That's right.
You know, Mr. Dowla will remember that in the old days there used to be a book called Japan as Number One, you know, where Japan was expected to catch up.
I see.
But now such a book would be laughable.
Right.
Okay. When Korea joined the OECD, it opened up its capital account, and within 4 years it had a major crisis, and it was part of the Asian crisis story of 97-98.
That's right.
So we have to be extremely careful, and this crisis of 2007-2008 is another reminder of the need to ensure that the financial system intermediates successfully and transforms savings and other forms of finance into real investments in order for economic development to take place.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jomo. I mean, let me come to Mr. Anisuddola, because you represent the biggest manufacturing companies of the country through Metropolitan Chamber, and you yourself as chairman of the SEI group also represent large investors in this country. So in your view, as you know, Dr. Sundaram has said that, you know, investment mobilization has to be made with a long-term view, and so that it adds to the real economy, as opposed to footloose money that comes in and goes out quickly, which may not add to the value of the add value in the process. In Bangladesh, but we know that the investment to GDP ratio is about 24%, but we also know, economists tell us, that if we need to push our growth rate from 6% to 8% or more, then this investment to GDP ratio has to be pushed up to about 35%. So to get there, what do you think needs to be done by investors locally as well as other investors?
Well, as we have discussed this, that our savings rate is higher than our investment.
Right.
And we also understood that savings follow investment. So we have a big gap, not only to cover, but also go beyond, so that everything follows in a positive way.
That's right.
We have very ambitious plans of growth 6% to 8% in 2 years' time, then to 10% to go to the income level of middle income.
That's right, middle income country level, yes.
By 2021.
Right.
This requires huge investment. To mobilize domestic investment, opportunities have to be created. Investment opportunities are restricted for the time being because of lack of infrastructure, power and gas. They will be overcome. Government is trying their best. So we expect in 2 years' time it will be overcome. Are we ready then to invest? We should be able to mobilize this large amount of money that we are getting from our overseas workers.
Migrant workers. Right.
So if we can use that in a productive way through investment, rather than land speculation, rather than consumption, that is one source which can give about $10 billion per year, and it will benefit them also, because it will.
And it is also increasing year by year.
Yes, it is increasing year by year. This is one issue, and even then the gap will be too much.
Right.
Domestic savings and the remittance cannot cope with that kind of ambitious plan, which will require us to have foreign direct investment. We have very good policy. Now, if we can have a good branding of Bangladesh,
right,
then we should be able to attract
FDI.
foreign FDI, provided we have sufficient power and sufficient gas.
Mm-hmm.
So those are conditional. Opportunities here are great, not only for domestic consumption, but also for
Exports.
because we have very efficient labor force, we can train them very well, and they are coming in large numbers, so we will have no problem of any shortage of labor, which is an issue worldwide in the developed countries.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to take a short commercial break, and then we'll come back. When we come back, we're going to discuss more on the specific instances where Bangladesh can learn from the experience and also adapt that experience to our own conditions. So stay with us. We're going to be right back. Welcome back to our program Orthonitir Chaka. We were talking to Dr. Jomo Sundaram, Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations on Economic Affairs, and also with Mr. Anisuddola, President, Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Jomo, what I would like to also know from you is, you know, in Bangladesh, we have had very strong growth in exports over the past decade, and our exports, besides garments and textiles, have done well also in pharmaceuticals, frozen foods, then shipbuilding, and IT-enabled services is a new field coming up. But despite growth in these other sectors, our overall export portfolio is still highly dominated by garments and textiles, which is about 4/5 of the total export basket. Do you know of any such examples in any other country who had their exports dominated by one sector, like as in Bangladesh? And what did they do to diversify this export basket so that you are not overly dependent on one sector?
Well, the problem, the big difference between Southeast Asia and Northeast Asia to some extent is the emphasis on exports in Southeast Asia compared to Northeast Asia, where there was more balanced development.
Okay.
Producing for exports, but also looking at the domestic market.
Consumption. Okay.
If you look, for example, the early years of growth in China, it was not only domestically oriented, it was largely rural based.
I see.
Not only agriculture, but also rural-based services, rural-based industries, which are commonly referred to as township and village enterprises.
Okay.
Yeah? Where increasingly the needs of the countryside were produced in the countryside. Agricultural equipment, processing of foodstuffs, processing of agricultural products, all that was taking place in the countryside with a surplus which was invested from the countryside itself.
I see.
Now, in Bangladesh, you have very different problems today. You have a situation where almost 2 million people are coming onto the labor force every year. You have to create jobs, and so for that reason, if insofar as transnational corporations want to locate here and industrial and create jobs, for instance, in garments, or in textiles, or in electronic products, and so on and so forth.
Any labor-intensive industry.
Any labor-intensive industry would be welcome. But let us not have any illusions that they are going to be here permanently.
Right.
They have a record of being footloose. They moved out of the Western countries into Northeast Asia, from Northeast Asia into Southeast Asia. Now they are moving into places like China and Vietnam, and they might move into Bangladesh, and they may move on at some point in the future.
Right.
But at least while they are here, they may create jobs. This, of course, will be welcome when you have so many people who are unemployed or underemployed.
Right.
However, I think looking forward in terms of what can be done, what Bangladeshis can do, clearly what can distinguish Bangladesh are those areas where you are able to lead with your own industrial and technological capacities and capabilities.
Okay.
And two things come to my mind. One is pharmaceuticals. Another example would be the renewal of the jute industry.
Right.
We are no longer talking about the old jute products. The renewal is based on new jute products.
Exactly.
And insofar as there can be continue to be very important innovation, there may be a future in jute.
Thank you. I mean, especially in jute, of course, you know, there is a organization here, the UN affiliated organization called International Jute Study Group, which is helping to diversify the use of jute in like jute textiles, jute plastics, and other types of jute products. So that you know, has potential uses in many different industries, including the automotive industry. Let me come to you. He said that one of the things that we have to emphasize on is innovation and research and development. So in that area, how are we doing in the Bangladesh private sector? Are the private sector companies investing enough in R&D? Are there enough resources available for innovation? Are there enough incentives for innovative ways to do things, develop products? What's your take on that?
We do not have any incentive for research and development.
Okay.
This we are telling the government to have some tax concessions for that. Excuse me. And in my view, because we are in a hurry to develop ourselves, we have got a very ambitious growth path, we should be able to get the foreign investment along with the technology and then become self-sufficient ourselves.
Right.
Trying to rediscover the wheel, I think we are going to lose precious time.
That's
So
right.
our industry has some small R&D activity just for adaptation of some formulation, things of that nature. But something significantly different we cannot afford to do at this stage. We neither have the capacity nor we have the financial incentive to do that. That is one issue. And the other issue you mentioned is about diversification of export. It will come the way shipbuilding has come. It will come through individual initiative. Nobody thought that Bangladesh would be able to export first-class vessels
Ships, right.
to Germany, but we did that.
That's right.
Similarly, I think there will be many such stories as we go along. The environment, the investment, climate, and the financial capability to invest. Once these are mobilized, and I think the government is quite aware of what is to be done to make that happen.
So we are in the right path for that to happen.
Yes.
So can we have the first question from the floor, please? Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I would like to question that greater integration with the rest of Asia in terms of trade is seen as one of the great untapped opportunities for Bangladesh. Sir, could you please tell me or give any suggestions according to you for what can be the effective Asian integration strategy for the government of Bangladesh?
As a member of the WTO, you cannot discriminate in favor of Asia. So I think you should not see Asia as a natural backyard. You should see the world as a natural backyard. But you should identify new market opportunities as well as new investment sources. As far as market opportunities are concerned, many of the pharmaceutical products, especially the generic pharmaceutical products, have a market all over the developing countries. There's absolutely no reason why, for example, Bangladeshi pharmaceuticals could not sell much more in sub-Saharan Africa. They are looking for relatively cheaper pharmaceuticals, and if the pharmaceutical products are of a high standard, and I have no reason to believe otherwise, I'm quite sure that you will be able to penetrate. In fact, Indian pharmaceuticals are already very dominant in sub-Saharan Africa, and with more marketing effort, I believe that this can also happen in Latin America as well as in the rest of Asia.
Thank you, sir. My question is, what lessons can Bangladesh learn from Malaysia's experience to the public-private partnership to build infrastructure here and to stimulate our growth? Thank you.
Yes, the experience with PPPs is a very complex relationship experience. One should not just learn from any one country. There are a variety of experiences to draw from, and both negative as well as positive lessons are to be drawn. What we don't want is a situation where the public sector socializes all the losses and the private sector socializes, collects all the profits. What needs to be done is some kind of equitable relationship, and therefore the essence of the relationship is in the contract.
So socializing losses and privatizing profits. So what do you want to say against that? Do you think that PPPs are only there for government to subsidize projects and for the private sector to maximize their profits, or can this be a vehicle for, as I said, mobilizing a lot of untapped resources both within the government and in the private sector?
Absolutely. PPP is a new concept for us, and the government has formulated some policies, and we are yet to fully appreciate the issues that we'll have to sort out. I understand Indonesia has a very good example of PPP. A large number of projects have been done there, which Dr. Jomo told me.
My question is, how can the government leverage the foreign community, actually the non-resident Bangladeshi who are staying abroad, to encourage them for foreign investment and transfer technological know-how?
Okay, thank you.
Today in the world, remittances are far greater in significance than foreign direct investment or aid. Okay, so there are many millions of Bangladeshis who are working abroad. So remittances can be very important. In fact, during the Asian crisis, remittances from Southeast Asians who were living abroad increased out of solidarity with their families who were suffering during the Asian crisis. So remittances can play a very important counter-cyclical role. And one famous example of this in the case of India is what is called Indus. The Indus group, Indians in the US, have played a very important role. Similarly, for example, much of the technological dynamism in the Taiwan province of China came from expatriates who came back after the democratization of Taiwan from the late 1980s and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Jomo. Thank you, Mr. Dola. We are at the very end of our program. আজকের এই অর্থনীতি চাকা অনুষ্ঠানে আমরা আলোচনার মধ্যে দিয়ে যেটা জানতে পারলাম যে আমাদের এই অর্থনীতির প্রবৃদ্ধিতে বিনিয়োগের কোনো বিকল্প নেই, কিন্তু এই বিনিয়োগ বাড়াতে গেলে পরে আমাদেরকে এশিয়ার বিভিন্ন দেশের যে অভিজ্ঞতা তার থেকে যে ভালো দিকগুলো আছে সেগুলো থেকেও আমাদেরকে শিক্ষা গ্রহণ করতে হবে, যে জিনিসগুলো কাজ করেনি, ফেল করেছে, সেগুলো থেকেও আমাদেরকে শিক্ষা নিয়ে আমাদেরকে এনশিওর করতে হবে যে সেই ফেলিওরগুলো যেন আমাদের দেশে আমরা রিপিট না করি। আবারও আমাদের এই অনুষ্ঠানে আসার জন্য আপনাদেরকে ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে আজকের অনুষ্ঠান এখানে শেষ করছি। খোদা হাফেজ।